Hi, everybody. Welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. So we're looking at a picture here of the day that the angel Moroni came down off the Salt Lake Temple 4 years ago. And this is what it looked like. Well, yesterday, the angel Moroni has been placed back on top of the Salt Lake Temple on the central spire. And this is what that day looked like. Do you notice a difference? In this picture, Angel Moroni missing trumpet because there was the earthquake that took place and magna caused him to drop the trumpet. And we've talked all about that. We're going to talk about it again in this video. But here he is coming off the Salt Lake Temple, gray skies without a trumpet. And then yesterday, back on top of the temple, shining bright with a bright blue sky in the background. We've talked a lot about the Salt Lake Temple. We've talked about the Angel Moroni statue and how I think the Lord uses that temple and including the Angel Moroni for signs and as symbols, right? And we're going to talk about, we're going to kind of do a review of some of the significant aspects, I think, of the the symbolism of the Angel Moroni and the Salt Lake Temple and things that seem to be connected to these two things. Here's the video put out by the church newsroom. Treasured symbol returns atop Salt Lake Temple. So here's just another view of the statue being lowered down onto the capstone of the temple. Just blue skies. The sun is shining bright. Okay, so I got a couple emails. I got this one from Barry Signs. Salt Lake Temple Angel Moroni is the subject line in the email. Hey, Jared, I just saw this video popped up about the Angel Moroni being placed back up on the Salt Lake Temple. I wanted to point that out because it made me think of the significance of the Angel Moroni losing his trumpet during the earthquake. When that happened, I thought it had meaning, especially the events surrounding that day. Let's do a quick review of what happened. So let's go to my Second Coming timeline. There were a couple interesting things happening at that time. So number one, we've talked about this a number of times, the star Betelgeuse, which is the right shoulder of Orion, of the Orion constellation. I've done videos about that star. It's done some really crazy things. And one of the crazy things that it's done was this. There was an event that took place starting in November 2019 called the Great Dimming. And as of right now, scientists believe that it was a dust cloud that obscured Betelgeuse. Like it blocked out the light coming from Betelgeuse. And so there was this great dimming event where, from our point of view, Betelgeuse looked like it got dimmer. And it started just a month before the COVID-19 pandemic started in China on December 12th. So great dimming, COVID-19 pandemic, and then fast forward to March of 2020. And that's when you had the earthquake that caused the Angel Moroni to drop his trumpet. It happened to be the 77th day of the year. On top of that, that's an interesting number. A couple days after that, the first presidency put out the message about missionary work and missionaries coming home and missionary work being restricted. And then 5 days after that, all temples worldwide were closed because of the pandemic. So this was a significant victory for Satan in stopping the work of salvation and hindering things, but it was only for a short while. Okay. But it doesn't seem like the Angel Moroni dropping his trumpet from the Salt Lake Temple was just coincidence or didn't have any meaning. There's a pretty clear image of an angel, sounding the warning call through his trumpet to the world, of the second coming and preparing for the Lord to come again. And if he drops his trumpet, that's probably not a good sign because that could be an indication that, hey, we're kind of done with the warning. Like the warning is now over. So anyway, yeah, there's lots of reasons to believe that that was a very significant event, especially the other things that were going on at the same time, the pandemic and the great dimming of Betelgeuse. Okay, back to Barry's email. I can also think of the possible metaphor of the Salt Lake Temple renovation connected to the renovation of the members of the church in general. I can apply it to myself. I can feel the Lord renovating my personal life as he is fixing and strengthening my foundation. The way that I have lived my life before is no longer sustainable for what is happening now and in the time ahead. As the Salt Lake Temple Foundation has been exposed and vulnerable, so I have felt those same emotions as the Lord exposes and strengthens my foundation. Thank you for your recent videos. I have felt an added burning desire to prepare for Jesus Christ's coming. It's becoming more real to me, Barry. Thank you for the email, Barry. I think that you're right. Yeah, we have noted before. I have this spreadsheet that keeps track of general conference talks by presidents of the church. And there's been a lot of interesting patterns and things with President Nelson's talks specifically. And one of those things is the number of times that he has used the Salt Lake Temple as like a metaphor for you and for me and for the church. And seemingly to get prepared for the second coming, how we need to go through this like renovation of our personal lives to be prepared for the second coming. And what he did, you'll see right here, so I have the different conferences that are highlighted in either white or blue. So the first time that he used the phrase Salt Lake Temple in a general conference talk was his first general conference as president of the church, April 2018. But he was just saying Salt Lake Temple in the context of that's where he was married and sealed. But then in October 2018, that's where he announces the renovation of the Salt Lake Temple. And then for 7 conferences in a row, 7, he brings up the Salt Lake Temple and talks about the renovation of the Salt Lake Temple. And then he just stops after that. So I definitely think that there is something to that. Each one of these times he used the temple as like a object lesson for us to compare ourselves to the Salt Lake Temple and to make changes in our lives. So yeah, I think Barry is definitely right. There's just so much going on with the Salt Lake Temple. Okay, now we're going to do this in chronological order, and we're going to get to the details of what just happened yesterday, but I want to start with this. Okay, so one thing that you may or may not know, I haven't talked about this in a while, is that in Revelation chapter 7, verses 1 through 4, the angels that are discussed in those verses were released at the dedication of the Salt Lake Temple. Let's read the scripture first. So Revelation chapter 7, verses 1 through 4. And after these things I saw 4 angels, okay, 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, and the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. And I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God, and he cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels, to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea, saying, Hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads. And I heard the number of them which were sealed, and there were sealed 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel. So think about this carefully, okay? I have a playlist about the 144,000 for even more, so that's not the point of this video. But I just want to show you that with the dedication of the Salt Lake Temple, these angels were released. So that means that if that has to happen first, like if the 144,000 have to be sealed in their foreheads first before the angels are released, and the angels were released at the dedication of the Salt Lake Temple, then it seems like that's already taken place. But again, I have an entire playlist for that, and I can explain all that in that playlist. In the meantime, I want to talk about the Salt Lake Temple and how that is what released the angels. So we find this in a few different places. Right now, I'm going to be reading from my spreadsheet called Quotes, Common Misconceptions. So this is from the Temple Workers Excursion. That's the name of the article in Young Women's Journal, August 1894, pages 512 to 513. This is Wilford Woodruff, president of the church, speaking. God has held the angels of destruction for many years, lest they should reap down the wheat with the tares. But I want to tell you now that those angels have left the portals of heaven. And they stand over this people and this nation now, and are hovering over the earth, waiting to pour out the judgments. And from this very day, they shall be poured out. Calamities and troubles are increasing in the earth. There is a meaning to these things. Remember this and reflect upon these matters. If you do your duty and I do my duty, we'll have protection and shall pass through the afflictions in peace and in safety. Later on, We have this from Joseph Fielding Smith in a book called, this is General Conference, in a talk called "The Field is White, All Ready to Harvest," April 1946 General Conference. At the time, Joseph Fielding Smith was in the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. He says, "I heard President Woodruff in this stand, this same place where I stand, bear witness as he had done in other places in 1893, that's the year that the Salt Lake Temple was dedicated, and up to the time of his death, that the angels who had been waiting to go forth to reap down the earth had now been sent upon that mission, and they were in the earth. Therefore, he said, we may look for calamities, for destruction, for plague, and bloodshed." And we certainly have had that. We've had 2 world wars. We've had a Cold War. We've had pandemics. We've had lots of conflicts. We have the Arab-Israeli conflict that's still going on. There's been a lot. Okay, next. This is in a book called Signs of the Times by Joseph Fielding Smith, pages 11 to 21. There's probably something wrong with that. 11 to 21? I'll have to double check that. Okay. Now, I want to make some comments in regard to the statement by President Woodruff and this parable, the parable of the wheat and the tares in D&C 86. The Lord said that the sending forth of these angels was to be at the end of the harvest, and the harvest is the end of the world. Now, that ought to cause us some very serious reflections. And the angels have been pleading, as I have read it to you, before the Lord to be sent on their mission. Until 1893, the Lord said to them, no. And then he set them loose. According to the revelation of President Woodruff, the Lord sent them out on that mission. What do we gather out of that? That we are at the time of the end. This is the time of the harvest. This is the time spoken of, which is called the end of the world. And then I think this is the last one. Yeah. You'll find this if you go to the Institute manuals. This is the Doctrine and Covenants student manual on page 191. President Joseph Fielding Smith, who was present when Wilford Woodruff talked about these angels at the dedication of the Salt Lake Temple, recorded the following. One day, while I was sitting in the presence of my father, President Joseph F. Smith, back about 1908 or 9, somewhere in there, I called attention to these statements of President Woodruff. And I said I would like to go over the records from the time of the dedication of the temple up until now and see what we can find in regard to these calamities, to the calamities, destructions, plagues. And he encouraged me to do it. And so I did. So I went over the newspapers and over the magazines and jotted down year by year the destructions, the commotions among men, everything in the nature of a calamity. And to my great astonishment, each year they increased. And they have been increasing ever since I quit making that record. I was greatly astonished by it, and when I called the attention of one of my neighbors to it, he almost got angry at me and said, "Oh, well, we've got better facilities now for discovering these things. I don't believe it." And he is a member of the church too, but seemed to lack faith in these predictions. So I know that you can also find this if you go to the Institute student manual for the New Testament, when you're reading in the book of the chapters covering the book of Revelation, they talk about that there too. So that's one thing that's associated with the Salt Lake Temple, the releasing of these angels. Okay. Salt Lake Temple, the releasing of these angels at the dedication of the temple. So when big things happen with the Salt Lake Temple, we should probably pay attention. So we just talked about the angel Moroni dropping his horn as a result of an earthquake. And it was at the time that the pandemic was starting to kick off and starting to affect life here in the United States, especially missionary work and closing all the temples worldwide. At the same time that a really prominent star in the sky was dimming, right? But there's more. Let's continue. I got this email from, from Preston Brown. Subject line, Moroni flies. Jared, there's not even any audio, but great video of Moroni flying through the air. And then he leaves a link for this YouTube video. This is from ABC4 Utah. And I paused it right here because I think that this is a really interesting shot where you have the angel Moroni flying past the Utah State Capitol building, right? We know that soon all governments of this world are going to submit to Christ and his government. It's all going to become the kingdom of Christ. But anyway, here's this video. I'll put the link for it in the description box below. And then he puts Revelation chapter 14, verses 6 through 7. And I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, into every nation and kindred and tongue and people. Say with a loud voice, fear God and give him glory, for the hour of his judgment is come, and worship him that made heaven and earth and the sea and the fountains of waters. And then Preston says, thanks for all you're doing, brother. Thank you, Preston, for the email, because that reminded me of this. This is something that President Gordon B. Hinckley said in the October 1995 General Conference in a talk called Stay the Course, Keep the Faith. Look what he says about the Salt Lake Temple. Or sorry, not about the Salt Lake Temple, about the angel mentioned in that scripture that we just read. He says, I have a strong, uplifting sense of optimism concerning this work. I have lived long enough now to see the miracle of its growth. Mine has been the favored lot of assisting in its establishment across much of the world. Everywhere it is growing stronger. Everywhere it is touching an increasing number of lives for good. Our statisticians tell me that if the present trend continues, then sometime in February 1996, just a few months from now, there will be more members of the church outside the United States than in the United States. And look at where we're at right now in 2024. It's even greater than that. Okay, the crossover of that line is a wonderfully significant thing. It represents the fruit of a tremendous outreach. The God of heaven, whose servants we are, never intended that this should be a narrow parochial work. John the Revelator, quote, saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation and kindred and tongue and people. Revelation 14:6. That angel has come. His name is Moroni. His is a voice speaking from the dust, bringing another witness of the living reality of the Lord Jesus Christ. So that's really interesting, right? We have the angel Moroni, the angel spoken of in the book of Revelation 14:6, is the angel Moroni. And we have him on top of the Salt Lake Temple. And we have all these interesting things that have been going on with this statue. And I think it's a sign. All these things are signs. Again, look at this. A dark day when he comes down off the temple. And then he's put back on and he's just shining bright. And it's a crisp blue sky. No clouds in the sky. Or at least not in this picture or any of the other pictures that I've seen. Like, look at this one. There's no clouds anywhere. Look at this one. No clouds. So just a bright day. Him returning to the Salt Lake Temple. Okay. Now, let's talk about when he was taken down from the Salt Lake Temple. So this is an article from the 18th of May, 2020. The Angel Moroni statue is being removed from the Salt Lake Temple today. Okay, look at this. A statement by church spokesman Daniel Woodruff, released on Monday, May 18th, noted, quote, this has long been planned as part of the temple renovation, but the timeline to do so was accelerated following the earthquake in March, end quote. Now that is an interesting statement because I think that you could say that this event probably corresponds to an acceleration of the work, right? A compression of events, like Elder Neil A. Maxwell said, but a hastening in the work, an acceleration of the work. So we have this kind of like untimely, but well-timed event take place with the statue of the Angel Moroni on top of the Salt Lake Temple. And by the way, when this happened, I did not have my YouTube channel yet. I watched a lot of other channels I was watching other like Christian channels as well that are into eschatology, the study of the last days. And many of them took note when this took place. This event was not just confined to members of the church. It's not like we're the only ones that knew about it. There were many other people that found out about this, and were taking it as a sign. All right, continuing. The 5.7 magnitude earthquake, which shook the Salt Lake Valley on March 19th, caused minor damage to several church-owned buildings in the Salt Lake Valley. The Salt Lake Temple sustained minor damages, including the trumpet falling from the angel Moroni and the displacement of some small spire stones. Now look at this. Work to remove the damaged statue in spires began on April 2nd. So yesterday was April 2nd. Yesterday was the day that the statue was placed back on the temple. So exactly 4 years. April 2nd. Interesting. Okay, so work to remove the damaged statue in spires began on April 2nd, when a new crane was installed on the south side of the temple's construction site. Construction on the Salt Lake Temple began on December 29th, 2019, and is expected to take roughly 4 years to complete. As it turns out, it's going longer than that, but that's okay. And now that brings us to this article talking about yesterday, Church News. As Angel Moroni statue returns atop Salt Lake Temple, Bishop Casse, others focus on Christ, covenants. So here's another picture of it. And yeah, no clouds. You don't see any clouds in this picture. On April 6th, 1892, okay, so this is exactly a year before the Salt Lake Temple was dedicated. On April 6th, 1892, after the exterior of the new Salt Lake Temple was finished, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints held a ceremony during which the temple's capstone, including a 12-foot gold leaf statue of the angel Moroni, was placed atop the center east tower. Church leaders directed the estimated 40,000 attending to give the Hosanna shout. And I didn't know that. They did a Hosanna shout. Of course, they did one at the dedication of the temple, but they also did one when the angel Moroni was placed on top of the Salt Lake Temple. As the Latter-day Saints across the Salt Lake Valley anticipated the long-awaited coming of the house of the Lord there, and the sacred ceremonies, ordinances, and covenants performed therein. So let me know if you knew that. Did you know that they did a Hosanna shout when the angel Moroni was put on top of the Salt Lake Temple? I thought there was just one when it was dedicated. Okay, nearly 132 years to the date later, the church held a much smaller, more subdued private gathering Tuesday morning, April 2nd. Or in other words, exactly 4 years from the time that they started to take the angel Moroni down for the renovations. On Temple Square in Salt Lake City, as the angel Moroni returned to its place atop the Salt Lake Temple's center east tower after a 4-year absence during the temple's extensive and ongoing renovations. You guys, these last few years, 4 years, it's been interesting, right? 2020 was a huge year. I think that 2024 may be an even bigger year. I'm really anticipating this upcoming General Conference later this week. And it's already been astounding that we have the Kirtland Temple back. I still can't wrap my mind around that. But I think that this has been a special, for a 4-year period. And on top of that, that's enclosed within this 7-year period between the two eclipses, the one in 2017 and this one coming up the day after General Conference of all days. I think we're in a very special time right now. And this is just another one of those things. Okay. It was lifted up by a crane against a blue sky backdrop and restored. That is, I think part of the symbolism. Restoration. We keep talking about the ongoing restoration. We've talked about how when the millennium is brought in, the whole earth is going to be restored to its paradisiacal state. Our bodies, yours and mine, and the bodies of animals are going to be restored to their paradisiacal terrestrial condition, not terrestrial glory, but condition. There's a lot to the restoration. A lot of times we think of like ordinances or doctrines, but I think it's this stuff too. And we just had this like restoration event that just took place with the angel Moroni on a day when the sky was clear and it was sunny. Restored to its same central east tower location, those attending the private ceremony, which included several dozen workers from the renovation project and others who had the good fortune of passing by the plaza at just the right time, applauded its placement. And once again, those gathered focused not so much on the statue as much as on the much anticipated opening of the house of the Lord, wherein the saving and exalting ordinances of temple worship and work can resume. Sorry, I just highlighted the house of the Lord because we've seen over the last couple months, like they're wanting to shift away from calling it the temple and use house of the Lord instead. That's going to take some work. Okay, later on, Tuesday morning's gathering on the Main Street Plaza between the temple, the Relief Society building, and the Joseph Smith Memorial building included several brief messages from Presiding Bishop Gerald Cassé and two descendants of Brigham Young and Wilford Woodruff, and a church history department representative. Okay, so there's the workers checking it out. President Young and Woodruff, the second and fourth presidents of the church, played key roles in the Salt Lake Temple. The former both identified the temple's location soon after the Latter-day Saints' arrival and oversaw the groundbreaking and early construction, while the latter dedicated the iconic house of the Lord after its 40-year construction. And we all know that that's significant, that it took 40 years. 40 is a symbolic number. And when it was dedicated by the fourth president of the church, that's when the angels were released. It was no small thing. Okay. Let's see. Elder Wilson continued, quote, as Brigham Young focused the Latter-day Saints on the meaning and purpose of the temple, he worked with fellow church leaders to organize the work. He called Wilford Woodruff to be the first temple president in the church. That's something I didn't know. Together, they organized the work of temple covenants in St. George, Utah. Brigham Young's action in following Joseph Smith's instruction to organize the temple ceremonies is an example of how revelation so often works. Pay attention to this. For those of you that struggle when there's new things revealed or there's a new understanding of a certain doctrine and it doesn't match up with before, like the way that we did things before, the way that we understood things before, look, it's line upon line in precept upon precept, a continually unfolding process. You guys, we can't be like these other Christians that think that everything ended with the Bible and now everything is just like set in stone. There's too many people in this church that have that. It's like they're not even Latter-day Saints. They don't understand continual revelation for the church and for the world, that we're going to continue to learn more things and have things clarified and things are going to change over time. It's not set in stone. The core principles of the gospel are, but our understanding, it's going to continue to, like it says, it's going to continue to unfold, and we're going to understand more, and we're going to understand more clearly than what we did before. Okay, continuing. After Brigham Young's death, Wilford Woodruff continued the charge from Joseph Smith. Okay, this is a cool picture right here as well. Okay, Mark Woodruff concluded with this teaching from his ancestor. Quote, the glory of the whole matter is that when we get through, we're going to have our families with us in the morning of the resurrection. The family organization of the celestial world to dwell forever and ever. And this is something, you guys, we are going to be seeing really soon, I think. when the second coming occurs. And when I say second coming, I'm talking about when we're together again with our resurrected family members and ancestors. That's coming for us really soon. And it's going to be really surreal. I feel like it's like sometimes when we talk about resurrection, it's like an abstract concept. We see it as something like far distant in the future, when in reality, we may see this within the next few years. And that's something to look forward to. It's going to become a very real experience for us. In the October 2018 General Conference, President Nelson announced plans to renovate and preserve the church's 4 pioneer-era temples: the Salt Lake City, St. George, Logan, in Salt Lake City, St. George, Logan, and Manti. On April 19th, 2019, President Nelson announced a closure date for the Salt Lake Temple later that year, December 29th, and an anticipated closure of approximately 4 years for renovations. The projected completion date has most recently since been amended to sometime in 2026. So that's going to be a very interesting year, 2026. And I think that's all that I have. My voice is starting to go out. Yeah, I think that's all I have highlighted and that I want to share. Oh, one other thing. There's this whole thing with the angel Moroni just being on top of temples in general. And I put together this spreadsheet of all these temples according to when they were dedicated. And if you look at this column right here, column S, this is where I'm tracking the temples that have an angel Moroni on top and those that don't. So the first 3 that were dedicated, St. George, Logan, Manti, did not have angel Moronis placed on top of them. The Salt Lake Temple was the first one. If you don't count like the weather vane, I think there was like a weather vane angel on top of the Nauvoo Temple. And maybe the Kirtland Temple? No, Nauvoo, I think. But it wasn't specifically identified as Moroni. So the first one that was identified as Moroni and made as like a gold statue, the first one of those was on the Salt Lake Temple. That's also, I think, pretty significant. The next 3 did not, and then the next 3 after that did. And so you see blue means no, yellow means yes. And there's been some interesting things that have happened. So in the case of the Ogden and Provo, Utah temples, they originally did not have angel Moronis, but in 2002 and 2003, the angel Moroni was added to those temples. And then the same thing with the Sao Paulo and Tokyo, Japan temples. They originally didn't, and now they do as of 2003 and 2004. Same thing with Freiburg, Germany. But then you have the Hong Kong temple that did originally have an angel Moroni. But during President Nelson's presidency, it's been taken down. I think there was like a renovation of the Hong Kong temple, and part of that renovation is there's no more angel Moroni. So you go through time, there's a bunch of yeses, and then here's another one. The Kona, Hawaii temple, it used to have an angel Moroni, but now it doesn't. It's been taken down during President Nelson's time. Then you have all these yeses, and then they start to go away. You have the Paris, France during President Monson's time. Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of the Congo, no. And then as you go on, you start to see that it starts to phase out. You start to have this like phasing out of the angel Moroni. And it basically corresponds with President Nelson's presidency. Okay. You just match up the colors. You know, you have green for President Monson. There's like 3 that didn't have angel Moronis. But then with President Nelson, they pretty much all start to go away for the most part. And then after this point right here with the Ivory Coast Temple, after that point, I have not seen any new temples or temple renderings that have had the angel Moroni on top. None. So if the angel Moroni represents is that angel from the book of Revelation, and now we don't have the angel Moroni on top of temples anymore, maybe that means something. Maybe it means that that time is coming to, or is at an end. You know, we're right up in the final phase, right before the second coming. And yeah. Okay, I think that's it. Okay, so if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.